You know, there are nights that just stay with you. No matter how many years go by, no matter how many shifts you've worked since then, some nights just stick. I'll tell you this one, I still get chills thinking about it. And trust me, I've seen my share of crazy calls. But this was my first real one. I was just a rookie back then. 25 years old, brand new to the Cleveland PD, south side of town. Night shift, 1992, that part of the city. Well, let's just say, folks knew better than to be walking around after dark. Old neighborhoods, rough streets, a lot of boarded up buildings, you could feel it in the air. Anyway, I remember this one night, it was maybe 3 in the morning, cold, the kind of cold that goes right through your jacket. We get this call, possible break-in, abandoned house, lights seen moving inside. Now look, you run drills in the academy, you practice drawing your weapon, clearing rooms. But when that radio crackles in the middle of the night, and you're the one rolling up on something real, man, nothing prepares you for that. And for me, that was the first time I'd ever had to pull my sidearm for real. I'd never had to actually hold it out, knowing that just maybe tonight I might have to use it. I'll never forget pulling up to that house. The windows were busted out, front door hanging off the hinges. My partner, he was a couple years ahead of me, just looked over and said, "You ready?" I wasn't ready at all, but I nodded. You kinda have to. So we went in. And, well, what happened next, that whole night, it changed the way I looked at this job. Changed me, too. I'll tell you the whole thing, start to finish. But real quick, if you like hearing these real stories from the guys who've been there, hit that like button. Helps more folks find this. And if you've got your own crazy moment from the job, drop a comment. I read all of them. Now, where was I? That house, that night. Like I said, I wasn't ready for what was about to happen. Stick with me, you're gonna want to hear this one. So, a little about me, just so you know who's talking to ya. Name's Mike. Born and raised right here in Cleveland. My old man worked at the steel mill, hard worker, long hours. Mom stayed home, kept us kids in line. We weren't rich by any means, working class through and through. I grew up watching guys like my dad bust their backs every day, trying to put food on the table. It was honest work. But growing up in this city in the 70s and 80s, you saw a lot of stuff. Some good, sure, but also a lot of bad. The neighborhoods changed. Places where you used to ride your bike as a kid, suddenly you wouldn't want to be there after dark. Drugs started creeping in, gangs, break-ins. It wasn't Mayberry anymore, you know? And as a kid, you noticed that. I remember being maybe 12, seeing a couple officers roll up the street, lights flashing, and thinking, man, that's a tough job, but also an important one. And I guess somewhere along the way, that stuck with me. After high school, I kicked around a couple jobs, warehouse work, driving delivery, but none of it really felt like something I could do for life. And then a buddy of mine said he was applying to the academy. I figured, why not? I was 24 when I started at the Cleveland Police Academy. It wasn't easy. Lots of long days, physical training, learning the law, firearms practice, but I actually liked it. It felt like you were working towards something that mattered. And the guys there, good folks, mostly you had each other's backs. I graduated and got my badge at 25. Man, I still remember pinning that thing on for the first time. There's a weight to it, you know? Not just metal, responsibility. First assignment was South District, the rougher side of town. Not exactly the postcard version of Cleveland, but hey, it's where they needed us. Nights were busy, bar fights, domestic calls, break-ins, sometimes worse. The city at night has a different heartbeat. You hear stuff, see stuff, smell stuff you don't during the day. You learn quick, gotta stay sharp, trust your gut. But here's the thing. No matter how much you train, no matter how many ride-alongs you do as a rookie, at first you're on the street, you're learning every night. I wasn't some tough guy, never claimed to be. I just wanted to do the job right, go home safe, make my old man proud. If I'm honest, I was nervous a lot. You try not to show it, but inside, you're thinking, man, I hope I'm ready for whatever comes. And that's why this night I'm telling you about, this one call, well, it stuck with me all these years. Because no matter how many shifts you work, there's always that one night where the job gets real. And for me, This was it. All right, so this was early in my first year on the job. I'd been out of the academy just a few months. Still pretty green. Learning the ropes. It was late winter, February, I think. One of those Cleveland nights where the wind just cuts through you. The kind of cold where your boots never seem warm enough, no matter how many layers you put on. I was working nights back then, the rookie shift. A lot of guys didn't want to pull nights, but rookies didn't get a choice. You showed up where they needed you. My partner that night was Jimmy. Now, Jimmy, he'd been on maybe 4 years. Not old-timer, but definitely knew the streets. Short guy, stocky, quick with a grin, the kind of cop who'd seen plenty, but didn't wear it heavy, if that makes sense. Good partner to have for a rookie. He showed me the ropes, didn't talk down, just taught by doing. We were running patrol out of the South District. That night had been fairly quiet, which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes makes you more nervous. 'Cause you know, quiet never lasts. We'd had a couple calls, nothing big. One bar scuffle, a noise complaint. Grabbed coffee over at that little 24-hour diner on East 71st, a spot a lot of guys would stop at mid-shift. I remember it was about 2:45 a.m. when the radio crackled, possible B&E, vacant property, lights seen moving inside. Address was down near Harvard and Broadway, old part of town. Bunch of rundown buildings, lots of places folks would squat or get into trouble. Jimmy looks at me and says, "All right, rookie, looks like we got something dot." I could feel my heart pick up, you know? I mean, we'd done calls before, but this was different. Vacant house, possible intruder, middle of the night. The unknown. And truth be told, up to that point, I never once had to draw my weapon on duty. All the drills and range practice, sure. But in real life, never. And this, well, I had a feeling this might be the first time. On the drive over, Jimmy's giving me little tips, almost casual. Watch your angles, clear your corners, don't get tunnel vision. I'm nodding along, trying to stay cool, but inside, man, my stomach was tight. You can't fake that. We roll up to the block, dead quiet. Streetlights flickering. That part of town at that hour, it's got a different feel. Like the city's holding its breath. And there it was, this old 2-story house, dark, windows busted out, front door kinda hanging open. Just seeing it, your senses go up. We parked a little down the street, lights off, moved in on foot. Jimmy leans over, gives me this look, like, "You good?" I just nodded. Was I good? No idea. But when your partner looks to you, you step up. And that was the moment it really started. One of those little snapshots in your mind. You remember the cold, the way your breath looked in the air, the feel of the grip in your hand. 'Cause I knew this wasn't a drill anymore. And inside that house, someone was waiting. Man, that night started shifting pretty fast once we stepped inside that house. You think you know what you're walking into, but until you're actually there, in the dark, it's a whole different story. So, Jimmy and I moved in cautiously, flashlights cutting through the black. The air inside was stale, thick with dust and something else I couldn't place, like the smell of old wood mixed with, I don't know, maybe a hint of fear. At first, it seemed quiet. Too quiet. Like the house was holding its breath, waiting. I remember gripping my sidearm tighter, the weight of it grounding me but also reminding me what was at stake. We checked the first floor room by room, and then we started heading up the stairs. That's when things started getting weird. We heard something, a noise upstairs. Not loud, but definitely there. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. My heart just jumped. You know that feeling when your body goes on alert even before your brain fully catches up? That was me. Jimmy nodded toward the hallway, signaling to keep quiet, and we moved closer. But here's the thing. Nothing in training really prepares you for the unknown, for the fact that you can't see who or what's there. Only the sound telling you that something's moving, and it might not be friendly. Then, as we reached the top of the stairs, the power went out. Just like that, the whole house plunged into darkness. My flashlight flickered for a second, then died. Man, it was like the whole world shrunk down to that pitch black. Jimmy's voice was low, steady, but even he sounded tense. You got your weapon ready? I was holding it with 2 hands now, finger off the trigger, but ready. That's when the dilemma hit me. Do we wait it out in the dark, try to call backup? or do we move forward, blindly? Every second felt like an hour. My training screamed to be cautious, but my gut told me that waiting wasn't safe either. And to be honest, I had no clue what the right move was. I could feel the weight of that moment crushing down on me, the responsibility, the fear. That's when I realized that no amount of practice had truly prepared me for what happens when the stakes get real. You can run all the drills in the world, but this was different. Then came the footsteps again, closer this time, coming from the end of the hallway. I could hear the faint scrape of shoes on the floorboards, slow but steady. And I remember thinking, man, this is it. This is where it goes one way or another. Jimmy whispered, "Ready on 3?" I barely nodded. 3. Then we moved forward together. And that's when the world flipped. Something crashed behind us, loud, sharp, echoing through the house. My heart was pounding so loud I thought maybe the guy upstairs could hear it. And suddenly, I wasn't just a rookie anymore. I was a cop in a real situation, faced with the unknown, weapon drawn, trying to keep calm and do the job. Man, it was crazy. That moment still gives me chills. Because from that second on, everything got complicated. The quiet house became a maze of shadows and fear. We weren't just investigating a break-in anymore. We were trying to survive the night. And that's when I learned that sometimes the hardest thing about this job isn't the criminals or the danger. It's what happens inside your own head when everything's on the line. The fear, the doubt, the split-second choices that could change your life forever. I'll tell you more in the next part. But for now, think about this. Have you ever been in a moment where you realized that no matter how much you prepared, the reality was something else entirely? Man, it's a feeling you don't forget. Man, that moment, it hits you like nothing else. You're standing there in that dark, creaky house, every nerve on fire, heart pounding like a drum in your chest. The footsteps were closer now, almost right behind us, and I could barely breathe. It's funny, in all the academy drills, they tell you to stay calm, to control your breathing. But in real life, trust me, that's a whole different game. I remember looking at Jimmy, and even through the darkness, I could tell his jaw was tight, as sharp. We were back to back, slowly inching forward, waiting for something, anything to give us a clue about who was lurking in the shadows. Then, out of nowhere, the sudden crash echoed through the hallway, something heavy falling over. My flashlight was dead, so all I had was the faint glow from the streetlight sneaking through a cracked window. I could hear my own breath, ragged and shallow, and I remember thinking, man, this is it. I raised my pistol slowly, finger off the trigger, but ready, and the silence after that crash was the loudest thing I've ever heard. And then, a voice. A low, shaky voice, not what I expected. It said, "Police, please, don't shoot." It was a kid, barely a teenager, crouched down, terrified. I tell you, in that moment, everything changed. The fear, the adrenaline, the tension, it all shifted into something else. I lowered my weapon just a bit, trying to get a better look. Jimmy whispered, "We gotta get him out safe." The kid was shivering, eyes wide, hands raised just a little. Turns out, he'd been hiding from someone, gang trouble, something bigger than us. And that's when the weight of the job really hit me. This wasn't just about catching bad guys or making arrests. It was about people's lives, scared kids, broken families, a city trying to hold itself together. I still get goosebumps thinking about that night because it taught me something I couldn't learn in any classroom. It's not just the gun or the badge that makes you a cop. It's the heart, the guts, the ability to face your fears and make a choice that might just save a life. That night was a turning point for me. I looked at Jimmy, and we both knew this job was real. It wasn't just about enforcing rules, it was about being there when it counted. After we got the kid to safety, I remember stepping outside, the cold air hitting my face, trying to steady myself. The adrenaline was fading, but the weight of what just happened, that stayed with me. I realized I wasn't the same guy who'd walked into that house a few hours earlier. And honestly, I never wanted to work a night shift again. That moment, so intense, so raw, it changed everything. And here's the thing I want you to remember. You can train all you want, but when you're in the thick of it, you find out who you really are. That's the story I'm here to tell. So, stick around, there's more coming, and it's stuff I hope no cop ever has to face twice. So, after that intense moment with the kid hiding in that old house, things started to calm down, but the weight of what happened didn't just disappear. Jimmy and I managed to get the kids safely out of the house and into the patrol car. He was shaking, scared out of his mind, but at least he was alive. Turns out, he'd been running from some serious trouble, gangs, fights, people who wanted to hurt him. It wasn't a simple break-in like we first thought. I remember watching him in the back seat, just quiet, eyes darting around, trying to process what had just happened. And for me, well, that night didn't end with a neat bow or a headline-worthy arrest. It ended with a lot of questions about the job, about myself, about what it really meant to carry that badge. The next few days were rough. I kept replaying everything in my head, thinking about what I did right, what I could have done better. I talked with Jimmy. We both agreed that night changed us. It was the kind of call that sticks with you, that shapes how you look at the streets, at the people you serve. For me personally, it made me realize how real this job is. Not just the danger or the adrenaline, but the responsibility to protect, to be the steady hand when everything's falling apart. And honestly, it also made me realize something else. I wasn't ready for those kinds of nights on my own. I'd always signed up to be a cop to help people, to make a difference. But that night, it taught me that sometimes, even with all the training in the world, you have to know your limits. After that incident, I made the choice to stop working night shifts. It wasn't about quitting or giving up. It was about understanding what I could handle without losing myself. Night work was tough. It's darker, more unpredictable. And for me, that night was proof enough that I didn't want to risk paying that kind of price just to make a few extra bucks or prove I could do it. Jimmy and I stayed partners for a while longer, but that night left its mark on both of us. The kid, I don't know what happened to him after we handed him off to social services and the proper folks, but I hope he found a way out, a better life than the one he was running from. That's the thing about this job. You see the worst sometimes, but you hold on to the hope that there's good beneath it all. That people can change, that cities can heal. That's why I kept at it for as long as I did, because I believed in that hope. Even when nights were tough, even when the fear came creeping in, that night was a turning point, no doubt. It changed my view of the job and of myself. It reminded me that behind every call, behind every badge, there's a real person, scared, hopeful, trying to do their best. And that's what I want you to take away from this story. Not the danger or the drama, but the heart, the courage it takes to keep going, even when the unknown is waiting around the corner. Thanks for sticking with me so far. There's more to this story, but for now, remember this. Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't with the streets or the criminals, but the ones inside your own mind. Man, after that night, it wasn't like I just walked away and everything was fine. To be honest, it stuck with me for a long time. I'd catch myself thinking about it at the weirdest moments, driving home, sitting at the kitchen table, even trying to sleep. It's funny how these things sneak up on you when you least expect it. I wasn't ashamed or anything like that, but there was definitely this heaviness, this weight on my chest that didn't just go away. I think what hit me the hardest was realizing how close it all came to something worse. Holding the kids' terrified eyes in my mind. Man, it reminded me that this job isn't just about enforcing laws or chasing bad guys. It's about real lives, fragile, scared, and sometimes just trying to survive. For a while, I found myself second-guessing a lot. Did I do enough? Was I fast enough? Could I have handled it differently? You know, those kinds of questions that don't have easy answers. But over time, I started to understand something important, that it's okay to feel shaken, it's okay to be human. Being a cop doesn't mean you're some invincible hero. It means you're someone who's willing to face fear head-on, even when you're scared out of your mind. And that takes guts. That night also made me rethink how I wanted to do this job. I realized I needed to take care of myself too, mentally and physically, or I wouldn't be any good to anyone. So I made changes, stopped working night shifts, started leaning on my partner and my team more, and learned to be honest about when I needed a break. That's not always easy in this line of work. You don't want to seem weak or like you can't handle the pressure. But honestly, it's the smartest move I made. That experience shaped who I am today, not just as a cop, but as a person. It taught me that bravery isn't the absence of fear, but the choice to keep going despite it. And every time I think back to that night, I remember why I put on that badge in the first place, to protect, to serve, and to make a difference. That story stays with me, and I'll never forget it. But it also reminds me that behind every badge, there's a human being with fears, doubts, and a whole lot of heart. You know, after all those years since that night, the biggest thing I took away wasn't some fancy lesson or catchphrase. It was simple. You never really know how you'll react when it really counts. You can spend hours at the range, drilling your firearm, practicing tactics, running simulations. But when you're standing in a dark hallway, heartbeat pounding, and someone's footsteps are coming closer, it's different. That's when it's not about training. It's about what's inside you. Will you freeze? Will you rise up? It's a split-second choice that changes everything. And honestly, I think that's what makes this job so tough and so real. No matter how prepared you are, that moment of truth will test you in ways you can't predict. And that's okay, because it's those moments that shape you, that make you more than just a cop. They make you human. The night taught me to respect the job, respect the people we serve, and respect myself enough to know my limits. It's why I stopped taking night shifts, not because I was scared, but because I knew I couldn't give my best when I was running on empty or when the fear started to take hold. It's a job that demands a lot from you, and you have to be honest with yourself about what you can handle. So yeah, that's the lesson. Be prepared, do your job, but don't forget to listen to yourself. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is know when to step back and take care of your own well-being. And I think that's a message worth sharing. After that night, the story definitely made its rounds around the station. Not in a bragging way or anything like that, more like a quiet reminder among the guys about how unpredictable this job can be. I wasn't looking for a legend status, I was just trying to make it through my shift. But you know how it goes, cops talk, stories spread, and that one became part of the conversation. Some of the veterans nodded when I told it, others gave me tips and advice, sharing their own moments where things got real. It made me feel like part of the team in a way I hadn't before. But more than that, it changed how I approached my work. After that, I was a lot more cautious but also more focused. I stopped trying to be the tough guy who could handle every night shift or every crazy call. Instead, I learned to respect the job's weight and my own limits. I made peace with the fact that it's okay to ask for help or to say when you're not ready for something. And that actually made me better at my job. I didn't run into a situation quite like that one again, thank God. But every time I hear about a rookie facing their first big call, I think back to that night, and I tell them, stay calm, trust your training, but most importantly, trust yourself. The thing is, that night wasn't just a scary moment, it became a turning point. It taught me humility, patience, and the importance of teamwork. It made me realize that being a good cop isn't about being fearless, it's about being steady when fear shows up. And that's something I carried with me through the rest of my career. So yeah, the story stuck around, sure. But what really stuck with me was how it shaped me, not just as a police officer, but as a person. And that's the part of the job that no one ever tells you about until you live it yourself. So, here we are, the end of this story, at least for now. I hope by sharing that night with you, you got a little glimpse of what it's really like out there. Not the movies, not the headlines, but the real, messy, sometimes scary, sometimes hopeful moments that make up a cop's life. I won't pretend it was easy, far from it. But those experiences shape us. They change how we see the world and ourselves. And here's the thing I want you to think about. In moments of pressure, fear, or uncertainty, who do you really become? Because for me, that night was a mirror. It showed me my limits, my strengths, and everything in between. I learned that courage isn't about not being scared. It's about facing the fear anyway. Now, I'm curious, if you were in that house with me, hearing those footsteps, waiting in the dark, what would you do? Would you freeze? Step forward. What's the one thing you think you'd struggle with the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely interested to hear what you think. And if you liked hearing this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's more coming from people who've been there, done that, and want to share the real side of the job. Thanks for sticking around and listening. Stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing isn't the gun or the badge, but the heart behind it.